Jared frowned in disbelief. I'm really a resident here. I even have a key to the house, Jared exclaimed as he took out a key from his pocket. That was the key that was given to Jared by William. It had the crest of Dragon Bay in gold on it. Because of how exquisite the key looked, the security guard did not doubt its authenticity. After taking a closer look at the key, the security guard sized Jared up once more. Hey, where did you get this key from? It's a key to the mansion on top of the mountain in Dragon Bay. This mansion is the most expensive of all the properties here. Since it was purchased by Mr. Sullivan, how did this key end up in your hands? Jared was shocked upon hearing that. Wow. The mansion William gave to me is the most expensive of them all? What a gift. Indeed, Mr. Sullivan gave it to me, Jared answered truthfully. Nonsense. Why would he give it to you? You must have either stolen it or found it on the ground somewhere, am I right? The security guard shouted suspiciously. He then waved for a few more of his fellow security guards. Keep your eyes on them. I need to make a phone call to clarify this. After giving out the order, the security guard left hurriedly with the key. After noticing the tense situation, Gary grabbed Hannah, and they both also got out of the car. Furthermore, the taxi driver was also spooked. He took out their luggage and left the scene in a hurry. Jared, what's going on? Hannah asked worriedly since she couldn't see what was happening. Don't worry, Mom. Everything's fine. It's just a normal security check. They're very strict here at Dragon Bay, Jared consoled Hannah. Of course, they should be strict. This is the most luxurious neighborhood in Horrington. I can even smell the fragrance of flowers from here. Hannah couldn't contain her excitement. However, Gary was fed up. We're being held up by the security. Obviously, something's wrong here. I shouldn't have trusted Jared. Why would someone lend him a house in Dragon Bay? Just then, a black Mercedes-Benz drove up slowly and stopped right next to them. Hey, isn't that you, Jared? What are you doing here with your whole family along with your luggage? It can't be that you're moving in to stay at Dragon Bay, right? Warwick asked in a sarcastic tone as he was getting out of the car. After that, Sandy and Juliet came out of the car as well. The three of them then looked at the family of three mockingly. They were there to take a tour around Dragon Bay because Sandy wanted to show them the house Leighton had bought for her as a wedding gift. However, since they bumped into Jared and his family, they decided to stick around and find out what was going on. After giving the trio a cold glare, Jared ignored them. What's going on here? Sandy questioned one of the security guards. Having noticed that Sandy came in a Mercedes-Benz and also she was in designer clothes, he said politely, Miss, these people said that they're the residents of Dragon Bay. One of them even took out a key to a mansion. Our captain suspects that they must have somehow found the key somewhere or stolen it. Hence, we're waiting for our captain to come back with a confirmation. Upon hearing that, Sandy, Warwick, and Juliet burst into laughter. Ha ha ha! Jared, you're ridiculously funny! Just because you found a key and you dare to come here calling yourself a resident? What a fool! Warwick mocked. Juliet, while laughing uncontrollably, added, Do you know how much it costs to buy a mansion here? Do you really think you can afford it? I think even after sweeping the streets for 100 years, your dad still can't afford one. Hurry up and get rid of these people. Especially that fellow, he's an ex-convict. He has just gotten out of jail today. If you let him set foot in there, he's going to ruin the reputation of Dragon Bay, Sandy told the security guards while pointing at Jared. Upon hearing that, the security guards started panicking, and they all took out their batons. If the other residents were to find out that an ex-convict was present in the vicinity, the security guards would be in big trouble. Jared, why don't you just get lost? Please bring along your blind mother and your sanitation worker father. Do you really want to wait until the security guards put their hands on them? Warwick continued mocking. What did you just say? Jared clenched his fists angrily. What? Are you going to hit me? Warwick teased. He then laughed hysterically and walked toward Jared. I suppose you might have learned a move or two in jail, but do you know where you're at? Trust me. I will send you back in there if you dare to lay a finger on me. He then put on an arrogant face and shoved Jared. Seemingly frightened, Hannah softly gave Jared's elbow a nudge and pleaded, Jared, let's just leave. Hannah was afraid that Jared might get himself in trouble again. Since Jared had a criminal record, the authority might not be lenient toward him if a commotion were to break out. She definitely wouldn't be able to handle it if Jared were to be sent back to jail. At the same time, Gary was also getting increasingly worried. He stared at Jared and said, "Get our things now. We should leave. This is so humiliating." Gary then started to pick up their luggage as he was determined to leave immediately. He could no longer bear the humiliation. "Ha ha ha. Yes, get lost. If I ever see you again, I'll take my revenge and beat you up." Warwick pointed at Jared. "All right, let's get back into the car. It's embarrassing to be seen talking to these people," Sandy yelled at Warwick. After they had all gotten back into the car, they drove straight into Dragon Bay. "Mom, wait. I'm telling the truth. My friend really lent this mansion to me," Jared reassured Hannah. "Wait? What are we waiting for? Do you really want us to be dragged out of here?" Gary was fuming. Just when Jared was about to retaliate, he saw how old and weak his father had grown. Because of that, he swallowed his pride and kept his mouth shut. At that moment, the security guard that took the key had returned. When he saw Jared, he said to him apologetically, "Mr. Chance, I'm so sorry. We've made a mistake. We're a bunch of fools. We'll send you this instance." After he said that, he turned and ordered the rest of the security guards, "Keep all your batons. Go get the car now and send Mr. Chance and his family in." "Roger that." The security guards nodded frantically. Then they brought a car and escorted Jared and his parents into Dragon Bay. While in the car, Gary's expression had changed. He had no idea what to say to Jared because he was skeptical of him the whole time. "Oh my God, Jared! How generous of your friend to lend you a mansion!" Hannah was extremely excited to be in Dragon Bay and to be able to smell the fragrance of the flowers. "Don't worry, Mom. If there's an opportunity, I'll definitely bring you to meet this friend of mine." Jared knew that Hannah was dying to know who his generous friend was, so he planned to let Josephine meet his parents in the near future. Sandy and the others had arrived at a mansion halfway up the mountain. Sandy stopped the car and they got out. "Sandy, I'm so envious of you. This mansion is magnificent. I'd trade 10 years of my life just to have a mansion like this," Juliet exclaimed when she saw Sandy's mansion. "This is nothing. The prices for mansions here at Dragon Bay depend on how high it is located at the mountain. Do you see the one at the top of the mountain? That's the most expensive one. I wonder who bought it." Sandy pointed at the mansion on the mountaintop. Right at that moment, a car was slowly driving past them. One of its windows rolled down, and they saw that it was Jared. He was smiling mischievously while staring at the three of them. "Jared? Isn't that Jared in the car?" Warwick was the first person to notice that. By then, Sandy and Juliet had also seen him. Sandy was furious when she saw the expression on Jared's face. "How did that brat enter? Those security guards are useless." Could it be that he's really a resident here? It was a security guard that was driving them in. Juliet furrowed her brows in confusion. "And they are driving up the mountain. Could it be their mansion is located at a higher point than yours, Sandy?" Warwick's eyes were glued onto the car as he saw it travel further up toward the mountaintop. "That's impossible. Jared could never afford it. I know how his family is doing financially." Sandy refused to believe what was happening before her eyes because she knew Jared's financial situation best. Could it be that the mansion was given to him by the Sullivan family? I've heard it from Mr. Sullivan that Jared had saved his life before, Juliet speculated further. "That could be it." Warwick nodded. "What sheer luck he's having. If he didn't just so happen to have saved Mr. Sullivan's life, he would have died in Glamour Hotel earlier." Sandy was utterly dissatisfied. She gritted her teeth as she opened the car door and said, "Let's follow them and see for ourselves." She was eager to find out if Jared had really gotten himself a mansion in Dragon Bay. As Sandy's Mercedes-Benz followed closely behind, they were heading straight toward the mountaintop. This can't be possible. Could Jared really be heading toward the most expensive mansion? Juliet was getting anxious when she saw that Jared's car wasn't stopping yet. It can't be. That mansion on the mountaintop is worth at least $100 million. Jared wouldn't be able to afford it even if his whole family were to slave for their whole lives. Besides, why would the Sullivan family be as generous as gifting him a mansion worth $100 million? Warwick refused to believe it as well. Eventually, they arrived at that mansion they had mentioned earlier. Sandy's Mercedes-Benz was stopped by one of the security guards. "Hello, miss. You're not allowed to go any further. This is private property." Jared knew that Sandy and the others were following behind, so when he saw that they were stopped, a cold smirk appeared on his face. When Jared and his parents arrived at the mansion, it was surrounded by clouds of thick fog. The scenery was breathtaking. Both Jared and Gary were astounded by what they saw, and although Hannah couldn't see, she could feel the fresh air in the surrounding. The security guards proceeded to help Jared bring their luggage into the mansion. Before they left, the captain apologized to Jared again. "Mom, you'll be staying here with Dad from now on. The environment is splendid here. It's good for you." Jared was holding on to Hannah as he brought her into the mansion. Gary was stunned when he walked into the mansion. He had never seen such luxury in his life. Realizing his mistake, Gary intended to apologize to Jared, but no matter how hard he tried, his pride wouldn't let him. After a short tour around the mansion, Jared wanted to show them the surroundings. "Mom and Dad, let's go have a look outside. You should get familiarized with the place, otherwise you get lost in no time." "All right, since I can't see, describe everything to me so I can feel it," Hannah exclaimed with a bright smile on her face. "Mom, don't worry. I'll get your eyes fixed." Jared then brought his parents for a tour around the mountaintop while treating their eyes to the magnificent view. As Jared was bringing them around, he could feel the spiritual energy the place had. It was essential to Jared because he needed that for his cultivation. "What a perfect location this is for training." "What did you say?" Hannah asked. "Oh, it's nothing. I said this is a perfect place for retirement." Jared laughed awkwardly. When they were walking around, they arrived at the entrance gate. That was where Sandy's car was stopped. Apparently, Sandy and the others were still there, and they saw Jared walking by. Jared smiled coldly at them as they stood on each side of the gate. Behind that smile, contempt was written all over his face. Sandy was clenching her teeth so forcefully it could be heard from miles away. She couldn't accept the fact that Jared had become the owner of the most sought-after mansion. "What a friend you got there, Jared. He's so generous that he's willing to lend you his mansion. Would you ask him out for a meal with us?" Hannah had no idea they were standing right in front of Sandy and the others. "Sure," Jared nodded. "Oh, so the mansion isn't his after all." Sandy was somewhat satisfied when she heard Hannah's words. "I've asked my friend. This mansion belongs to the Sullivan family. It seems like Jared is just showing off something that isn't his," Warwick exclaimed while seemingly reading a text on his phone. "Just because he saved William's life, he plans to leech off of him for life. What a shameless guy," Juliet mocked. All thanks to Hannah, Sandy and the others no longer feel inferior. "Even if I've only borrowed the mansion, it's still far better than yours. Come on over then if you could." Upon hearing their mockeries, Jared beckoned them by waggling his finger. "Don't get ahead of yourself, Jared. I don't believe that the Sullivan family is going to stand by you forever," Sandy blurted before she turned and left. Due to the structure of the road, the side of the gate Jared was standing on was higher. Hence, it was hard for Sandy not to feel as though Jared had one over her. "Jared, just stay away from Sandy from now on. She's a vicious lady," Hannah advised after hearing the way she was speaking to Jared. "Got it, Mom. Let's continue our tour." Jared held on to Hannah as they continued walking. Gary was following them from behind. After a while, they went back to the mansion to get some rest. That was when a red Porsche suddenly appeared at their doorstep. Jared glanced outside and noticed that Josephine had arrived. "Miss Sullivan, what are you doing here?" Jared was surprised by her visit. Please stop calling me Miss Sullivan. Josephine will do. I received a call from the security guard saying that you might have stolen the key to the mansion. I came here to clear up the confusion." After knowing that Josephine had gone all the way there just to help him, Jared felt grateful. "It's okay. Everything's fine now. But I do have a favor to ask of you." "Go ahead," Josephine nodded. "I told my parents that a friend of mine lent me this mansion. Could you just play along? There are a lot of things I'd rather keep from them at this moment," Jared whispered. "Sure, no problem." Josephine smiled before heading into the mansion, but suddenly she turned back toward Jared. "So, does this suffice to me asking for their blessings for our relationship?" she teased. Jared was stunned. "I'm just kidding." Josephine chuckled and went into the mansion. Upon hearing that, Jared smiled wryly and followed behind. In fact, he did feel butterflies in his stomach when Josephine teased him. "I'm just a commoner compared to her. She's the daughter of the wealthiest man in Horrington. How could I ever live up to that?" "Mom, Dad, let me introduce the friend that lent me this mansion. Her name is Josephine Sullivan." Jared introduced Josephine to his parents after they had gotten inside. The moment Gary and Hannah heard that Josephine was the owner, they both got up from the couch respectfully. "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Chance. It's nice to meet you. Please forgive me for coming empty-handed. I was in a rush," Josephine said politely. "You're too kind, Miss Sullivan. We are so grateful for the mansion you're willing to lend Jared. I'm afraid that if it weren't for you, I would never be able to stay in such a luxurious house," Hannah exclaimed humbly. "Gary, go get Miss Sullivan something to drink." "All right." Gary nodded. He was flabbergasted when he saw how beautiful Josephine was. Judging by her clothes and aura, she must be the daughter of someone of high social status. Not only that, she must be from a filthy wealthy family. Otherwise, how could she afford this mansion? If only Gary knew that Josephine was the daughter of William, the richest man in Horrington, he would be even more shocked. "It's okay, Mr. Chance. I'll help myself." Josephine went ahead and poured herself a cup of tea. After that, she even helped Gary and Hannah prepare a cup of chamomile tea each. Since it was her house, she knew exactly where everything was. "Mr. and Mrs. Chance, this is chamomile tea. It helps with your digestive systems. It's good for elderlies," Josephine said when she served them. "You're too polite, Miss Sullivan. Although I can't see you, I can tell that you're a beautiful and kind lady. Whoever gets to marry you would be the luckiest man on earth," Hannah exclaimed in a way that she was hinting at something. Regardless of her status, she must have feelings for Jared. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so generous toward him. Hannah was trying to pry some information out of Josephine with her hint. "Mrs. Chance, you're over-complimenting me. I do have my flaws. That's why Jared doesn't want me. He's even scolded me before." Josephine was not so gullible as to not see what Hannah was implying. "Oh, is it?" Hannah paused and waved for Josephine to approach her. "Miss Sullivan, come here and sit with me. Actually, Jared is a good guy. It's just that he can be as stubborn as a mule sometimes. He got that from his father. If he were ever to scold you again, let me know. I'll teach him a lesson." Upon hearing that, Josephine burst out into laughter while casting a glance at Jared. "As stubborn as a mule?" Jared was embarrassed when he heard that. "Mom, stop talking nonsense. She's a busy person. Don't keep her around for long." Jared was trying to get Josephine to leave before Hannah exposed more of his embarrassing stories. "I'm not busy. I'd love to chat with Mrs. Chance." Josephine went toward Hannah and sat down beside her. Hannah was so happy that she couldn't stop smiling. She then held Josephine's hands and they chatted for more than 2 hours. Josephine only left when it was getting dark outside. "Jared, she's such a nice lady. I could sense that she came from a well-off family. Despite that, she never once acted arrogantly. You have to work harder so that you can have a relationship with her," Hannah advised after Josephine had left. "Mom, stop it! We're just friends," Jared answered helplessly. "Indeed, Jared. I think she's nice too. Listen to your mom. Work harder to please Josephine. You know I'm always right when it comes to these things," Gary added. It was incredibly rare for Gary to talk casually with Jared. so it meant that he was very sure of how he felt toward Josephine. "All right, you two. Stay out of it." Jared went into his bedroom after that. After he had gotten into his bedroom, Jared didn't go to bed. Instead, he sat down on the floor with his legs crossed. He then calmed himself down and shut his eyes before initiating the focus technique. Suddenly, waves and waves of spiritual energy rushed toward him. Throughout the past 3 years, Jared had never skipped a day of his training. Although it was an instruction from Draco, Jared insisted that he would continue refining his spiritual energy even after getting out of jail. Not long after that, all the spiritual energy on the mountaintop had gathered around Jared and formed a whirlpool. Gradually, Jared breathed in the spiritual energy. Due to Jared still being in the early stages of the process, the amount of spiritual energy that he could absorb was still considered to be little. However, slowly but surely, he could improve himself over time. By the time Jared opened his eyes, it was already sunrise. After letting out a long breath, Jared realized that he had never felt better in his life. It was because the spiritual energy at the mountaintop was way purer than in prison. Instead of tiredness, he felt rather energetic after the cultivation. "Jared, it's time for breakfast." Jared stretched his body and got out of his bedroom upon hearing Hannah's voice. Gary had prepared a sumptuous breakfast for everyone. Not only that, his attitude toward Jared had changed. He was gentler toward him, and he even smiled at him. Perhaps it was due to Josephine's visit the day before. After breakfast, Gary brought Hannah out of the mansion for a stroll. On the other hand, Jared planned to head out to visit an antique market. He was hoping to find a calligraphy brush and cinnabar rosary imbued with spirituality. Jared was eager to heal his mom and restore her eyesight. Meanwhile, Sandy, Juliet, and Warwick had spent the previous night at Sandy's mansion. The moment Sandy thought about how Jared had ruined her wedding the day before, she was bristling with anger. Even worse, Jared had just moved into a mansion more luxurious than hers. "Warwick, what time did you say those friends of yours would arrive?" Sandy asked. "They'll be here soon. As they're all martial arts experts, Jared would be torn into pieces. Besides, these tough and ruthless friends of mine are from the Triads." Warwick knew that Sandy wouldn't do anything to Jared. Hence, he made a few phone calls to his friends. He wanted revenge for what Jared did to him as well. "That's good, then. Jared has to come out of the mansion at some point. The Sullivan family can't keep him safe at all times." Sandy was fuming as she clenched her teeth. "That piece of trash. Not only did he break Leigh's arm, but he also ruined my wedding. He deserves to die." After she was done raging, Sandy looked at Warwick and said, "I have to go to the hospital to see Leigh now. You take care of Jared. After it's done, you can expect a handsome reward." "No problem. Wait for my good news." Warwick nodded. As Jared walked down the hill, he was stopped by a group of 4 to 5 men along the way. "Jared, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Warwick smirked at Jared. Behind him was a group of fierce-looking men wielding clubs in their hands. "Why are you waiting for me?" Jared shot Warwick an icy glance. "If you're looking for a fight, you lot are no match for me. Yesterday, I took out more than 10 men from the Scott family single-handedly. Do you think just a handful of you can defeat me?" "Ha ha ha ha! Jared, how dare you speak with such arrogance before knowing who I brought with me? You'll naturally learn their identities once you're begging for mercy on your knees." Laughing heartily, Warwick was unfazed by Jared. Warwick had seen for himself what happened yesterday. Baldy and his men were nothing more than incompetent street thugs who were each defeated by a single punch from Jared. Unlike the day before, Warwick's men were all martial artists who could single-handedly defeat 10 men by themselves without breaking a sweat. "It seems I let you off too lightly the last time. I should have broken your limbs so that you won't be making a fool of yourself right now," Jared sneered while giving Warwick the side-eye. "Damn you! How dare you still bring up yesterday? I'm going to beat you till you grovel for mercy if it's the last thing I do." With that, Warwick turned to his men. "Men, someone is willing to pay 100,000 to whoever that beats him till he begs for his life on his knees." At the mention of 100,000, the men's eyes sparkled. Don't worry. If you want us to make him cry, laughing will be the last thing he does. If you want him to drop to his knees, we'll never allow him to stand. Given how weak he looks, one kick from me alone will cause him to cry for his mommy." The men threw Jared condescending looks, clearly not seeing him as a threat. "Is Sandy the one offering the reward?" Jared asked Warwick. Warwick nodded candidly. "That's right. I'm not worried about letting you know. After all, it's not like you'll dare to cause her any more trouble. After beating up Leighton, the Scott family will definitely not forgive you. All I'm doing now is serving you the appetizer of what's about to come." "Fine. Looks like I shouldn't have shown you any mercy." After spreading his hands with a shrug, Jared suddenly launched a kick in Warwick's direction. Bam! Warwick was sent flying upon impact. His men, who had looked down upon Jared a moment ago, froze as they couldn't believe their eyes. To be able to send someone flying with a kick, one needed to be extremely powerful. Evidently, Jared wasn't someone to be trifled with. Cough! Cough! Crashing onto the ground, Warwick threw up a pool of blood. After that, he bellowed vengefully, "Kill him! Kill him!" After exchanging glances with each other, his men charged forward, motivated by the reward. Just as expected, all of them were not only trained men, but also well-coordinated. Pfft! Jared sniggered before dashing forward to meet their attack. Bam! 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 In less than half a minute, the group of men had collapsed onto the ground, groaning and grimacing in pain. Warwick was so shocked that he gulped in fear. He couldn't imagine what Jared had gone through in prison to have gained such strength. After all, the men he hired had spent their whole lives training in martial arts schools and had made a name for themselves. In spite of that, all of them were easily defeated. "Do you still want to kill me?" Jared taunted Warwick as he slowly walked up to him. What are you trying to do?" Stricken by horror, Warwick backpedaled. This was Sandy's idea. Before Warwick could finish, Jared stomped on his arm. The moment he felt the excruciating pain, Warwick let out an agonized cry. Without a doubt, his arm had been broken. "Stop using Sandy to threaten me. Both she and Leighton will be getting what's coming from me." With that, Jared turned and left, ignoring Warwick's miserable cries. The Horrington Antique Street was the largest antique market in Jazona. Many antique collectors would visit it, hoping to score a treasure. Both sides of the street were filled with roadside stalls that displayed all sorts of antiques, including silverware, bronze coins, paintings, etc. One could find everything under the sun there. Nevertheless, one also had to rely on one's eye to tell the genuine goods apart from the fakes. Even the most experienced antique specialists could be fooled due to the excellent quality of the imitations. As a result, it was very difficult to discern the authenticity of the items sold. One would have to rely on both skill and luck to be able to spot any treasures. Since it was Jared's first time in a place like that, his curiosity was piqued by the smorgasbord of items on display. When they saw the look on Jared's face, many of the stall owners smiled in glee. To them, he was obviously a fool that could easily be cheated. "Kid, what are you looking for? I have everything here, and I guarantee they're all authentic." Armed with a welcoming smile, a fat stall owner pulled Jared toward his stall. Then, he whispered in Jared's ear, "Let me tell you, everything I'm selling was excavated from the ground and is at least 1,000 years old. If you buy them, you would definitely make a fortune by reselling them." Jared swept his gaze toward the fat man's stall that was no more than 2 meters wide. There were more than a dozen loose items strewn across it, and all of them looked really old. In fact, some of the bronze items were even covered with rust. When he caught Jared looking at his stall, the fat man turned on his charm. "Kid, why don't you take a look and see if there's anything you like? I'm being forced to sell them because someone in the family is sick, and I need money for the medical bills, or else I wouldn't even be doing this." Ignoring the stall owner, Jared knelt down and picked up a piece of iron ore that was covered with rust. Then he began to examine it in detail. Amongst the pile of inanimate objects, only the unassuming lump of iron ore was emitting a faint hint of spiritual energy. "Kid, you truly have a good eye. This is an insignia carried by a palace guard in ancient times. Unfortunately, it was soaked in water underground, causing it to rust extensively. If you fancy it, I'm willing to part with it for 10,000. The fat stall owner gave an enthusiastic description of the item when he noticed how fascinated Jared was with it. That damn fatty is going to make a tidy profit again by selling that lump of worn-out iron ore for 10,000. Fools like that guy are the easiest to trick. This time, the fatty is definitely going to slaughter him. The owners from the surrounding stalls began gossiping among themselves as they watched on enviously. Nonetheless, this is still good stuff, Jared commented with a nod to himself. Holding the piece of iron ore, he could feel the rush of its spiritual energy getting stronger. In response to Jared's comment, the stall owner smiled cunningly to himself. He added earnestly, "That goes without saying. My wares are the best, and I've never cheated anyone before. If not for a sick family member, I wouldn't be selling it for 10,000, as I consider it one of my treasures." As the stall owner continued his story, his eyes began to redden while tears actually flowed out. Watching the stall owner's unconvincing act, Jared couldn't help but scoff internally. "I'll take it for 10,000. I'll transfer it to you right away." Without a moment's hesitation, Jared took out his phone to pay. Elated at the news, the stall owner provided Jared with his account details. "Kid, you're a real easygoing person. Nonetheless, I have to make it clear that I don't accept returns, so you had better not come back later to do so. Don't worry, I'm not returning it. If my judgment is wrong, I'll bear the consequences myself." Chuckling, Jared transferred 10,000 to the stall owner. The moment he heard the notification of incoming funds, the stall owner couldn't hold back his joy. At that moment, many in the crowd had seen Jared spend 10,000 to purchase a rusty lump of iron ore. Some were having a heated debate over it, while others laughed mockingly at him. Given how young Jared was, they assumed he would be easily duped in his attempt to find treasures in Antique Street. Nevertheless, Jared ignored their comments and the fat stall owner's laughter. Instead, he gently squeezed the piece of iron ore, causing the rust to gradually break apart. Crack! The iron ore split open in his hand. After that, the crack began to grow bigger. Wow, the kid has a really strong grip. Did he just spend 10,000 so that he can exercise his grip? Since he doesn't look rich from his outfit, does he have any violent tendencies? Or else why break it right after buying it? The crowd couldn't believe what was happening. Even the fat stall owner stared intently at Jared, curious as to what he was up to. Soon the iron ore broke in half, and a dazzling ray of light shot out of it. A translucent piece of green jade the size of one's thumb was revealed to be hiding inside. Holding the piece of jade, Jared threw away its shell. Evidently, the spiritual energy he had felt earlier was coming from the jewel. That's an imperial jade. Damn it, he's gonna be rich! Did the kid already know there was something inside? Everyone, including the stall owner, was so stupefied that their eyes almost popped out. Holding the piece of jade, Jared examined it for a moment before putting it into his pocket. He planned to make it into a pendant for his mother. By wearing it, she would be able to ward off evil spirits and nourish her body at the same time. Just when Jared was about to leave, the fat stall owner stopped him. "Kid, I have something to discuss with you. Why don't you sell the rock to me?" the stall owner asked smilingly. "I'm not selling." Jared shook his head and prepared to circle around the stall owner to leave. When the stall owner realized Jared was leaving with no intention of selling, his expression drastically changed. "Kid, have you made a mistake? That piece of jade belongs to me. How can you take it and leave?" "Yours?" Jared was stunned. "I just bought this, so how can it be yours? In fact, everyone just saw me purchase it." "I sold you a lump of iron ore, not this piece of jade. You can take the iron ore with you, but the jade has to stay." The moment the stall owner finished speaking, a group of menacing-looking men suddenly appeared from behind him. "That kid is just too inexperienced. Knowing that there's something inside, he should have opened it at home instead of doing it here, which was just asking for trouble. He's in deep shit now, and is going to lose the treasure he's just gotten his hands on." The piece of Imperial jade is worth $1 million at least. I think it's definitely worth more than that. Despite sympathizing with Jared, none in the crowd stood up for him. When he saw the group of brawny men, Jared responded with a smirk. You guys are nothing but con men who commit daylight robbery. Shut your trap. Hand over the jade and I'll let you go. Or else, you're not leaving here in one piece. The stall owner was finally showing his true colors. I've long heard about how much fraud and deception there is in Antique Street. Looks like the rumors are really true. Today I would like to find out what you'll do to me if I refuse to hand over the jade. Jared sneered without an ounce of fear on his face. Jared's words offended everyone on Antique Street. Not only did they swear at him, but they also egged the fat stall owner on to teach Jared a lesson. Kid, you're just courting death! Just as he spoke, the stall owner threw a punch at Jared. From the hiss of the wind accompanying the punch, Jared could see that his attacker was a trained man. There was no way a layman could unleash such a fast and powerful strike. Thinking about it, he realized it made sense for them to know how to fight. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare run a fraudulent business in such an area. Snorting, Jared threw a slap with his hand. Despite not being the first to attack, he managed to land his strike on the stall owner first. Upon impact, the stall owner spun in a few circles before coming to a stop. The slap caused his already pudgy face to swell even further, making him look even more like a pig. Get him! And kill him! The stall owner bellowed. With that, the group of burly men roared as they charged at Jared. Bam! 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 In the blink of an eye, the men were kicked back by Jared. Upon crashing onto the ground, none of them were able to get back up. Stunned by what they saw, the hollering traders fell silent. In fact, they attempted to slip away after realizing that Jared wasn't someone they could afford to mess with. Having regained his senses, the stall owner scowled. Kid, how dare you cause trouble here in Antique Street? Do you know who owns this turf? The Templar Regiment. Mr. Lewis runs this place, and you've gotten yourself in some real trouble by kicking up a fuss here. The stall owner knew that once he brought up the Templar Regiment, everyone would quiver in fear and flee. After all, it was common for trouble to break out in Antique Street. Hence, throwing that name around had always come in useful. The Templar Regiment? Jared sneered. What are you going to do if I told you I'm not afraid of them? Who isn't afraid of us, the Templar Regiment? Just as Jared spoke, a piercing voice rang out. In the next moment, the crowd quickly stepped aside to open a path. A man with a scar on his left cheek approached them. Behind him were more than 10 menacing-looking men. Regardless of the stall owner or the crowd, everyone was filled with terror at the sight of the men. The stall owner quickly crawled up to him. Scarface, this kid is causing trouble here and even snatched the jade I wanted to present to Mr. Lewis. It's a piece of Imperial jade, which is his favorite. The stall owner demonstrated his cunning with great flair. An Imperial jade? Scarface's eyes lit up. Kid, show me the jade. Are you one of Tommy's men? Jared asked. Bastard, how dare you address Mr. Lewis by name? Emboldened by Scarface's presence, the stall owner pointed at Jared and snapped, This is Mr. Lewis's most important lieutenant, Scarface. He's in charge of Antique Street security. Ignoring the stall owner, Jared looked at Scarface and flashed his ring at him. Do you recognize this ring? Upon taking a closer look, Scarface scoffed. That's just a worn-out bronze ring. What's there to recognize? Now hand over the jade and I'm willing to forgive your transgressions toward Mr. Lewis. Jared took out the jade. When it glistened underneath the light, Scarface's face lit up in delight. Quick, give it to me. Scarface waved at Jared. Fiddling with the jade, Jared plainly remarked, Since you don't recognize my ring, you should get Tommy to come here. As long as he's here and wants the jade, I'm willing to give it to him. What did you say? Scarface fumed. Mr. Lewis isn't someone you can order around at will. Who do you think you are? You arrogant idiot. You're forcing me to teach you a lesson. If you refuse to get him, I can give him a call. With that said, Jared took out his phone. You have his number? Scarface furrowed his brows. Given how important Tommy was, not everyone had his number. Now that Jared was in possession of it, it was a sign that he wasn't just an ordinary person. Jared read Tommy's number aloud and looked in Scarface's direction. Do you want to call him? Or should one?